Welcome to The Romantic Side of Suspense with Sarah Hamaker. In each episode, she'll talk with your favorite romantic suspense authors. They will take you behind the scenes of the writing process, giving excerpts from their writing, and share stories about their writing life.
Hello, and welcome to The Romantic Side of Suspense. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and I'm so glad you joined me. This episode, you're going to hear about this month's new releases in Christian romantic suspense. I hope you will enjoy hearing from your favorite romantic suspense authors as they talk about the background of their latest books.
I'm delighted to have Cate Nolan on my show. She's going to talk about Colorado Christmas survival. So welcome to my show, Cate.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk about your heroine and if she does or doesn't have a pet. And if she does have a pet, tell us what it would be. And if she doesn't, tell us what pet she would have, if she could.
She doesn't currently have a pet. My heroine is Hope Prescott. But if she did have one, it would be a reindeer. Because in one of the scenes in Colorado Christmas Survival, Hope and her daughter, Emmy, are rescued by a woman with reindeer, and her daughter becomes absolutely obsessed with them. So Hope would want one for her daughter.
And what would the reindeer's name? What?
Well, I was going to say, this is love-inspired suspense, so it's a happily ever after, so she would get her reindeer. And, of course, she'd name it Rudolph.
Of course she'd name it Rudolph. I mean, and who wouldn't be obsessed with reindeer?
In the story do have names that are kind of a play on those reindeer names.
Oh, fun. That's fun. So what about the hero in this story? What is his greatest fear?
Ian Fraser is a vet and a veterinarian. No, I'm sorry, not a veterinarian, a military veteran. And his greatest fear stems from when he was deployed, and he fears that he's not enough. When he was deployed, his wife died in childbirth, and he still blames himself for the failures in their marriage that made her risk a pregnancy that cost her life. So now in this story, he fears failing Hope and Emmy in the way that he perceives that he failed his wife.
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling that maybe his outlook and fear may not be as much at the end, because happily ever after. People. Yes, there's hope for him. So what about your villain in this story? Who or what does your villain love the most? And as I tell all my authors, feel free to use the generic they pronoun if you need to not give away the gender.
Well, that's interesting because when I was thinking about this answer, I thought it's tricky to answer without giving it away. But I'll just say that the villain loves revenge better than any person. Or you could say the villain only loves the villain. Yeah,
well, that self-love can get us into lots of trouble.
And it causes lots of trouble.
It causes lots of trouble, that's for sure. In our own life, I think we can all go, self-love is not all it's cracked up to be.
True.
All sorts of trouble. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that your story is set in Colorado. But why this setting?
Ever guess?
I know. I'm amazing.
Well, the short answer is because that's where my editor wanted it to stay.
Okay.
But it actually came because my book that released last July, Colorado Mountain Kidnapping, also set in Colorado, when I was doing the research for that, I learned about a group called Huts for Vets that provides wilderness therapy for veterans with PTSD, and they're based in Colorado. And since wilderness therapy for veterans with PTSD is a theme through this whole series, I was looking for a place that would be suitable for that. And the Rocky Mountains just seemed like the perfect place for them to go to heal. And I also chose this particular area of Colorado because I'd seen a video about runaway truck ramps, and I knew that was the perfect opening for my book.
Yes. Yeah, I've driven through Colorado several times, and it's, there's some...
We don't have runaway truck ramps here in the East.
Yeah, no,
but
not as much. No,
they are
not as
frightening to look at.
They are. You're like, oh, the truck's going to go way okay. Yeah. So why this particular story? What drew you to this story that you had to write it for Colorado Christmas Survival?
Well, a couple of reasons. When I was writing the first one, Colorado Mountain Kidnapping, I didn't have a series in mind, but as I was writing it and I got to know this whole band of brothers and sisters who had served together and were going through wilderness therapy, I really wanted to tell their stories. And then, so Ian was the first one up, and he and Hope had both been scarred by past marriages. And they're both strong, resilient people who won't rely on anybody else. So I wanted them to learn it was okay to rely on each other so they could have a chance at happiness.
I love that. We write such positive themes in the world that they need runaway truck ramps for. So
my daughter finds my books terrifying. She said, I'm tired. I need a nap when I'm reading them.
Yeah. That is so true. Some books are like that. So we're going to close our short time together today, Cate, with what's one thing you want readers to know about this particular book?
Okay, I want readers to know that the book is a mix of suspense and Hallmark Christmas. The suspense revolves around an app that creates a Hallmark-like celebration for a community. It's a countdown to Christmas. But villains hack into it in a ransomware attack that threatens people's lives.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good. So we need happy ending, people. Don't get Christmas.
It's Christmas. We have a happy Christmas ending with reindeer.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing about Colorado Christmas Survival.
Thank you for letting me talk about it. It's always fun.
I'm delighted to have Penny Zeller up next with her latest romantic suspense, Unexpected Witness. So welcome to my show, Penny.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here.
So we're going to dive right in and get talking about your heroine in this story. And what did she want to be when she grew up? And did she become that person in your story?
So Mila has always wanted to be a nurse, and she did become that in the story. But even more importantly than that, she always wanted to be like her Grandma Nan. Grandma Nan was a godly woman who cared for others and always looked for the best in people. She raised Mila when Mila's mom passed away and was actually neglectful of Mila her entire life. So Grandma Nan has been the mother figure, and so that is what Mila mainly wants to be, is like Grandma Nan, and she has achieved that. So that was her main goal.
I love that. That's nice. Nice when we can give our heroes or heroines that kind of background and closure, kind of like she became what she wanted to be. That's always great. So let's talk about the hero in this story. And I love that you picked this one. It's one of my favorite questions that I send my authors for these interviews. What's your hero's favorite snack?
So Rourke, of course, is, the dream cowboy, because readers love cowboys, right? Handsome cowboys, yes. I should say. So,
yeah.
So, his favorite snack is popcorn. And we get a glimpse of that in one of the scenes where he's sitting on the couch. It's been a long day. And he's sitting on the couch eating popcorn. And Mila is staying at his mom's house, who also lives at the house, with Rourke and Xander, a little boy, his nephew, who has lost his parents. But Mila walks in, and Rourke is eating popcorn. And he loves it, but he's trying to be a little better about buttering it as much as his dad did, because his mom would always tell him, that's not very good for you, but his dad would be like, I only have it once in a while. It's not a big deal. So it's kind of a fun interaction between them, but also shows, that while Rourke does care about being healthy, he does have a weakness, and that is popcorn. So, and I totally agree with him, so it's all good.
Yes, I know. Love popcorn. Love to have popcorn. So that's great. I love that. I love it how you weaved it into the story as well. I think it's fun when we can give our characters those little humanizing touches. So I'm assuming that you said cowboy. So let's talk about the setting. Why this setting for the for your cowboy and his potential love interest?
So, of course, in my mind, and this could be because I live by the mountains, a cowboy has to have his ranch that's, always backed up to the gorgeous mountains, So that is the setting for the story, is a ranch with a picturesque view of the Pronghorn Falls Mountains. I picked that for a couple of reasons. For one, obviously, the cowboy, he rides the horses, he works the ranch. He also, has four-wheelers and UTVs, things like that, which will come into play later. But also because it also offered a few places to hide, which bad guys need. So that helped. And also because I just have to look out my window and I can get the inspiration, but I'm a very visual person. So having that ability, I would probably do better writing in the mountains with a ranch backed up to that than probably writing by the beach with a setting by the beach, even though I love the beach too. So those were the main reasons why I picked the setting that I did.
Yeah, no, I'm with you about the mountains, but that's a whole other discussion. We're going to focus on the book. So let's tackle the unexpected witness, and is the name, and what is the underlying positive message of that book?
So because it is a Christian romantic suspense, there is faith woven throughout the book, and the main underlying positive message of this is trust in God, which Mila has had to see throughout her entire life, having a mom who didn't really want anything to do with her and then later passed away. She's had to rely on God to get her through that, and of course she had Grandma Nan. And then later on in the book, when she is faced with a bad guy or two who want to get rid of her, she has to also rely on him. So it's good for her to see that faithfulness throughout the book, and we also see that in Rourke also as well, because he lost his dad, who was a sheriff in the town, and to a drunk driver who hit him. And so Rourke has had to rely on the Lord as well, because they almost lost the ranch, and because he's now helping to raise his orphaned nephew. So that's the underlying theme for the whole story. And the verse that I chose was actually Matthew 6:34. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And that was a verse that Grandma Nan would always say as well. And that's something that has stuck with Mila. So even though she goes through some very scary moments in the book, she's able to call on the Lord and recall those important verses that she learned early in her faith walk.
Oh, I love that. That's such a positive message, Penny, and I think one that will resonate with a lot of readers. But we're almost out of time, so let's close our short time together with, what is your book's tagline?
Sure. It is, if she can identify one person, she could bring down an entire crime network. Because she was an unexpected witness of a horrific crime, she wasn't supposed to be a witness of that crime, and so they are very concerned that she will be able to identify them. So that's how that feeds into that tagline.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing about Unexpected Witness.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to be here.
Next up is Jodie Bailey talking about her latest release, Taken at Christmas. So welcome back to my show, Jodie.
Thank you for having me back.
So your heroine in Taken at Christmas, what did she want to be when she grew up? And I love finding this out. Did she become that person?
She did. She did, and then she lost it because she always
to.
Yeah, right? She always wanted to, help other people and such, and she went into law enforcement, and unfortunately she had some trauma on the job. She was first on the scene to a armed robbery at a convenience store and found out that the victim was her husband. And so she went into PTSD, and stepped away from the job and had to raise her young daughter on her own. So she had her dream job, and then unfortunately the circumstances came along and she had to step away.
Ah, well, that's tragic. I'm sure something positive is going to happen in your story. Because we're right.
Yes.
Happy ending. But
of course.
Yeah. What is holding your hero back from finding love?
He was her husband's best friend, and they all grew up knowing each other together. And he was one of the first. He's also in law enforcement with her, and he was the other first responder on the scene that night. And so they were together. And so there's a lot of guilt that they both carry, and a lot of trauma that they both carry. And so what's holding them back is just trying to manage and deal with and work through their grief together, because it was 4 years earlier. And then that idea that she might mean more to him than he means to her. And so he's kind of a little hesitant there.
Ah, of course. So what about your villain? Who or what does your villain love the most in this story?
See, I have to be careful not to give too much away here. I would say self. As a lot of villains are motivated by self and what they want at the expense of anyone else. Their desires override anyone else's. But at the core of that desire, there's something the villain wants family. And so, but they're going about it the whole wrong way because their need is so much bigger, they think, than someone else's need in the book.
Ah, yes. Yeah, that always gets us in trouble, doesn't it? When we think we're the most important
thinking of
person.
ourselves.
Yep. Why did you pick this story setting?
I've always wanted to write a book at the Outer Banks, and right now we're not doing a lot of books set at the coast. And so when we go to the Outer Banks, it's my favorite place in the world. And how I know I'm almost there is when we cross the Alligator River. And so there's a town near there called Columbia. And I kind of took Columbia and moved it closer to the Alligator River and gave it a new name. And so it's kind of like an homage to my favorite place without actually being at my favorite place. And so I had a lot of fun writing about someplace I had been and seen and was familiar with, but putting my own fingerprints on it.
I love how we can do that with our writing. We can change a few things and make them our own. Yay! Always fun. For you, what was the hardest part of writing Taken at Christmas?
The grief aspect, because I knew that I wanted to do a book that dealt with grief, but at the same time, you're walking a fine, delicate line there, because real people read your books. Your people and your books aren't real, but they are going through things that real people went through, and so you want to be protective of your readers and protective of their stories, and so you want to be authentic and real. But you're also you're walking that fine line of these two people are falling in love again, but they're also grieving someone very important that they've lost. And so that was hard to do, but it was challenging and ended up being really an interesting process of walking through that one.
Well, yes, I love how we can do that, but you're right. We have to take a delicate hand when we have such big emotions like grief and other things like that. So
we always want to take care of our readers.
We do want to take care of our readers. We love our readers. So, Jodie, we're going to close our short time with what's one thing you want readers to know about Taken at Christmas?
Okay, the fun thing is, all these years later, all these books later, I finally have a series. And I'm so excited. There's going to be 4 books. I'm working on book 3 now. And it's about the Trinity investigation team. And so I'm super excited that we get to hang out. I've woven characters into books before, but I've never had an official badged series before. And so I'm super excited about getting to do that.
So it's Taken at Christmas, book 1?
Number 1.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your book today.
Thank you, Sarah.
And I'm delighted to welcome Rebecca Lake to my show. She's going to talk about His Last Text, her latest romantic suspense. So welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk about your heroine in this book. What did she want to be when she grew up, and did she become that person?
Well, so this is a series. So in the first book, Where Secret Lie, Anna felt like her mother didn't stand up for herself. So Anna decided that she wanted to pursue a career in law to stand up for people like her mother, who either wouldn't or couldn't stand up for themselves. But then when her mother died, she kind of let that dream go, and then a call prompted her to return to Idaho. And that's when His Last Text kind of came in, is she had an opportunity in that story to find her purpose, and she was able to right some wrongs and inspired to improve lives of others through some of the events that occur.
I love that. That's a wonderful way to help her to fulfill that desire. So what about your hero? Where did he grow up?
Well, so the story is a little bit complex, so I'm going to use Wyatt, her first love, for this response. And he grew up in the mountains of Idaho with his grandparents off and on because of his family situation. And his grandparents lived next door to Anna, who lived in a small wooden shack next door to his grandparents' large modern cabin. And they actually, as children, knew each other. And then she moved away, and then they reconnected later in the story when she returned to Idaho.
Oh, nice. And so what about I love talking about our villains. So why did you decide to make this particular person the villain? And as I tell all my authors, feel free to use the they pronoun if you don't want to give away the gender.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, the villain's mother was really selfish, and they only received praise and accomplishments from the mother when they did something that helped her self-serving goals. So the villain developed kind of a perception where where they equated money with love. And so he became more and more obsessed with wealth, and that obsession made his behavior more and more erratic. And so that just made, I've already spilled it with the he pronouns.
It's okay. Nobody's paying that close attention.
So he became the ideal bad guy. So it was just really his obsession that made him the ideal bad guy.
Okay, that's great. So what about the story setting? I think that you mentioned maybe Idaho, but correct me if I'm wrong. Why did you pick that particular setting?
No, you are right.
Oh, good.
And I think the whole setting is really what inspired me to write in the first place. Is when I was young, I grew up going up to the mountains of Idaho, and back then, you could roam and you wouldn't see anyone. And where I used to roam through the mountains, there was like an old abandoned gold rush town. There was an old cemetery from the early pioneers, and there was just so much intrigue and mystery. And I even one time listened to a miner tell a yarn about different things that had happened, and it just stirred my imagination, and it just seemed like there was so much potential for with danger and the terrain. To write a romantic suspense using some of that in the story.
I love that. And what about this particular story made you, why did you want to write this particular story?
Well, I had written the first book, which is, Where Secrets Lie, and there was one secret or remaining kind of twist that was left. And I actually wanted it in the first book, but I was so excited about it, and I needed something for the second book, so I saved it. And I used that twist for the second book and then just started typing, and it was like this story just had been waiting to be written. It was so fast and easy, really, as far as, kind of putting the initial draft together. And I just smiled when I typed it. So I think the story kind of, just came together as I typed, but it's just, I think it will always be my favorite.
I love that.
I just really enjoy it. I know maybe you're not supposed to say that, but it was a lot of fun to write, and I just really hope, I hope there's readers that enjoy it as well.
And we're going to close our short time together with what's one thing you want readers to know about his last text?
Well, I think one interesting thing is that each time I write a story, I try and incorporate something that's inspired from, an actual event. And so the secret key that was the twist that I brought through actually was inspired by an unbelievable story I read, and I just thought it was so interesting. And it's not the actual story, but it's inspired from it, and it's a twist that is based on something that really happened.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing about his last text today.
Okay, well, thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to welcome back Tina Wheeler to my show. She's going to talk about her latest romantic suspense, Ambush on the Ranch. So welcome back to my show, Tina.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So we're going to start with the heroine of this book and her name. Why this particular name?
Well, my critique partners always complain if I have characters that start with the same letter. So with every book, I write out or I type out the alphabet, and then I mark off the first letter of each name. And this particular series, there's a lot of people in the family, so there were a lot of letters already marked off. And I knew I wanted her to have a soft-sounding name because her twin sister is a few minutes older and took on the older sister role, and I wanted her to have to start with a letter that was hard-sounding. So I went through and I thought, well, J's a soft-sounding letter, and then I put up a list of girl names, and I went, oh, Janelle. I like Janelle. That sounds good. And then I know like K is a hard-sounding sound, so I named her sister Carla. So it wasn't I had a relative or anything like that.
Right. That's okay. I do like your idea of the alphabet. I might have to steal that because that's a good idea. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that tip. While we talk about your book. I love that. So your hero in this book, what's his greatest fear?
He's afraid that they're going to lose their family business and then their ranch, which has been in the family for generations. In the previous two books, law enforcement brothers have brought witnesses home to the ranch, and they had a bombing there, they had shootouts there, and they've lost some businesses. The resorts in Sedona would book them for trail rides and cowboy cookouts and hay rides, and he's the oldest brother, Zach is, and so he's been running the ranch since his father retired. He's also a volunteer sheriff's deputy, and so when he starts to protect Janelle, he doesn't really want to bring her to the ranch because he's afraid if they have more trouble there that they're just going to end up going out of business.
Yeah, well,
but
I mean...
they're going to have to bring her back.
We know they're going to happily ever after endings. Spoiler alert. That's what I tell my readers, too. So, obviously, with Ambush in the title of your book, Tina, there is a villain. Yeah. Who or what does your villain love the most in this story?
He has a seriously sick son, and so that is part of the motivation for the things that he's doing in this story. And kind of on a side note here, my siblings take turns being named after villains. But in this particular one of my brothers is not the main villain, but he's a side villain.
Oh, that's hilarious, Tina. Yeah, I can't see my siblings fighting over that.
Running joke in the family.
That's pretty funny. So the setting, obviously it's a ranch setting, but what was the biggest challenge in writing the book within the setting that you have it in?
The ranch. So, and he, of course, didn't want to bring her there, and so I delayed that. And I was halfway through with the book when the editor said, we want them to go to the ranch earlier. Well, I don't want all the attacks to be the same, so I had to come up with additional attacks on the ranch and was trying to come up with something different. And then when the book was done, they said, we want you to suggest another cover, and we want it to be on the ranch. Well, most of the attacks that were on the ranch I had combined into other scene suggestions for the cover. So I brainstormed ideas, and then I sent a list to my editor, and I said, okay, why don't you pick the one that you think would be most likely something they would like. And instead of picking one, she picked two. So in the book that was already done, I had to go back in and add two more scenes, because as you know, they don't pick the cover until after you turn in the book.
Right,
and,
right.
So it was a lot of work.
Yeah, and it's challenging too. It's challenging to have to add things after the book is done. So what about the genesis of this story? How did that come about?
Well, as you know, when you send in your proposal, you list your hooks, and I always have the cowboy, and I always have close proximity. My hero and heroine are stuck together, and so I was looking at a list, and I thought, well, I've never done twins, and I've never done amnesia, so I decided to challenge myself and add it all in there.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love it how we can use those well-loved tropes and give them those fresh spins that our readers love. Well, we are almost out of time, Tina. Can you close our little short time with what's one thing you want readers to know about Ambush on the Ranch?
This story has more action and surprising twists because I needed to add those extra scenes. So it is going to be an exciting read from the beginning to the end. And so far, the early reviews, that is something they've been pointing out. You can't put the book down, according to them.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, Tina.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Romantic Side of Suspense with Sarah Hammaker. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. You can sign up to receive notifications of upcoming podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhammakerfiction.com.